dropped in trying to bring about a ceasefire was the linkage of the Palestinians to this battle.
You know, what is going now is not the political issues. Now, the first start is ceasing fire and to achieve peace. And, you know, after that, there will be the whole talks about the whole points, including Palestine, including South Lebanon, including the prices of the oil, including the security of the region. So this is the start. The start is ceasing fire to stop this flood war and to achieve real peace for all of us, not for one side and slavery to the other side.
What do you think is going to happen to the Palestinians as a result of this conflict?
You know, this area, without achieving a real solution, with one standard for the international unity, the volcano will continue in this area.
Well, in that case, the Palestinians lose whichever way you look at it.
The Palestinians will lose, the Israelis will lose, the Americans will lose, the Arab nation will lose, the people in this Middle East will lose, the nations in this. We have nothing to lose. This is the point. You can lose the friendship of the Saudis and the friendship of many Arab countries who've turned completely against you. You see, that is, you think that you have to understand that the crux of the whole issue, the main cause in this area is the Palestinian cause. No stability, no security, no peace, no settlement by overjumping the Palestinian rights.
And that was Yasser Arafat of the PLO talking to Peter George of Australia's ABC News. It's 25 minutes past 3. You're listening to Radio 4 News FM. In about 5 or 6 minutes' time, we'll be going over to the Commons, where the Defence Secretary Tom King will be making a statement. But on the line now, from Riyadh, is our defence correspondent, Mark Leahy. Mark, you were at the briefing. You heard what Brigadier General Neil had to say. What do you make of it? It just seemed unalloyed good news, apart, of course, from those casualties.
That's right, and I mean, put in context, those casualties are quite remarkably low. When you consider what seems to have happened in exchange, there's a blizzard of figures which myself and other correspondents are still trying to decipher. But the one to hang on to is that there's at least 270 tanks and probably another 30. Let's call it 300 tanks destroyed. You're talking about maybe 6 times the rate in one day that the air power was getting. Amongst those tanks, T-72s. That means the Republican Guard is engaged, and General Neil said they were being defeated. So I think what you're looking at here is a picture not of success, but also some indications as to the rate of that success. If they're meeting the Republican Guard, it means that that big armoured thrust on the to the west of Kuwait, which is the one that the British 1st Armoured Division's involved in, that big armoured thrust has got to the Republican Guard, or the Republican Guard came out to fight. So that's the big thing which you can read into those figures.
And add those, of course, Mark, too. I don't know whether you've seen this report from Reuters that the French forces are saying they've neutralised an entire enemy division and they've taken 3,000 Iraqi prisoners.
Oh, that's been acknowledged. That was acknowledged by General Neil. The French forces were, if not the first into action, certainly crossed the line at the same time as the first forces and raced ahead, and they've obviously done a remarkable job. What's notable too, 50 T-62s, that's something close to a couple of battalions, a couple of regiments of tanks trying to surrender, apparently. And then Marines, who are fairly lightly armed, destroying 50 or 60 tanks. Now, I imagine those Marines were to the west of Kuwait City. There was an attempted armoured thrust from Iraqi regular army, and they seem to have defeated it. So you're getting a picture here of moderate resistance ending, if these figures are true, and we must assume they are, in disaster for the Iraqis, while other Iraqis try to surrender. It is a picture of, as you said, almost unalloyed success, but also startling progress in terms of distance covered.
Mark Leahy in Riyadh, thank you very much indeed. Let's take a summary of the news now, just a little earlier than usual, because we're expecting to go to the House of Commons and Tom King, the Defence Secretary.
Corporal David Denbury of the Royal Engineers, who's from Gwent, died while taking part in what's described as a special mission. His family have been informed. The War Cabinet met at Downing Street this morning for about an hour Ministers were given a detailed briefing on the military operations and were told not to expect an early end to the war.
Defence Secretary Tom King is about to make a statement on the progress of the Gulf War, and there to take us through the statement and subsequent questions, our parliamentary correspondent Mike Fairbairn. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Peter, and welcome to the House of Commons, where, as you say, Mr. King is about to deliver his statement. He, of course, was at this morning's War Cabinet, which was briefed by the Chief of the Defence Staff, Sir David Craig, who, despite what we've just been hearing from the American military briefing in Riyadh, warned against too much euphoria, too much optimism about the progress of the land offensive. Mr. King's message, we expect, will be similar to that, and indeed similar to that given by the Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd at a select committee this morning here in the House of Commons, when he said the ground campaign was going well and according to plan, but these were very early days, and some significant Iraqi forces had yet to be engaged. Mr. King is about to give his statement. He's sitting on the government front bench with the Prime Minister, Mr. Major, who came in just a moment or so ago to a loud cheer from both sides of the House. Mr. Hurd is also there, and the Attorney General, Sir Patrick Mayhew, who's been taking question time today. There's been one question connected with the Gulf War. It was from Tam Diel, who's an opponent of the war, who asked about the legal implications of using napalm in the Gulf. He wanted to know whether there's any, whether the government had been consulted about its use. The Attorney General said there was no international law regarding its use. And now here we go with Tom King, the Defence Secretary, who is being called to make his statement.
Mr. Speaker, the final phase for the liberation of Kuwait and the achievement of the United Nations resolutions was launched in the early hours of Sunday, 24th of February. After more than 6 months of international endeavour to achieve a peaceful resolution of the crisis, the continuing refusal of Iraq to comply with the UN resolutions and the rejection of the final deadline from the coalition left us no alternative but to proceed with the final ground campaign. The need for this was further confirmed by the fact that at the very time that Tariq Aziz was still purporting to negotiate in Moscow, Saddam Hussein was giving orders for the wholesale destruction of Kuwait and its oil fields and further outrages against its citizens. These land operations involve forces of no less than 11 countries: the United States, Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, Egypt, France, Syria, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and of course Kuwait. They have now been underway for 38.5 hours. So far, progress has been rapid and relatively little opposition has been encountered. Excellent planning and preparation, and above all their determination, have enabled the coalition forces rapidly to penetrate the extensive obstacle belt that the Iraqis had constructed both along the Saudi-Kuwait border and along a substantial part of the Saudi-Iraq border. To the east of this front, coalition forces have now advanced well into Kuwait and have taken a significant number of prisoners. Many of the Iraqi units encountered surrendered almost immediately. To the west, US, UK, Saudi and French forces have mounted an operation into Iraq against Iraqi forces supporting the occupation of Kuwait. Some elements are encircling Iraqi units, others are breaking through defensive positions and beginning to engage Iraqi units direct. The 1st British Armoured Division is fully involved in this thrust and is now moving steadily forward. The Saudis have announced that the number of prisoners of war taken by the coalition has now risen to 20,000. Casualties on the coalition side have been very light. As the House may be aware, 2 British soldiers lost their lives in the days immediately before the start of the ground offensive, and their families have been told of their deaths. On my latest information, there have been no British casualties in the main advance. In support of these land advances, Allied air forces, including British aircraft, have continued their attacks both on strategic targets in Iraq and on the Iraq ground forces in Kuwait and Iraq. These attacks are continuing in spite of poor weather conditions and without serious interference from the smoke of burning oil wells. Maritime and amphibious forces in the Northern Gulf are playing their part in the coalition attack. In particular, the Royal Navy is playing a crucial role in mine clearance operations. During these operations last night, the Iraqis fired a Silkworm missile, which was destroyed by a Sea Dart fired from HMS Gloucester. It is vital, Mr. Speaker, that we give all the support we can to the coalition forces in their challenging task. One of the key advantages is the lack of knowledge that the Iraqis have about our exact positions and plans. We must preserve this advantage. That is why we have been so concerned to restrict any information about the military operations that could be of help to the enemy at a critical time. I understand the great interest of the whole country in the progress of our forces, and particularly among the families of all those involved. And we shall do all we can to give accurate information, provided that it can be done safely and without putting lives at risk. In the meantime, we look for the full understanding and cooperation of all those reporting and commenting on the battle. Mr. Speaker, this further phase of the campaign has started well, and every credit is due to General Schwarzkopf and all the coalition forces. However, they know that the Iraqi forces in the front line are their least capable and likely to be of the lowest morale. The news so far has been good. There may be days ahead when it is more difficult. But whatever the ups and downs, our forces know they have the support of all the House and the nation. Our prayers and our best wishes go with them as they complete the task.
And now Martin O'Neill, Labour's defence spokesman.
Thank the Secretary of State for his statement and recognise the need to avoid making helpful information available to the enemy, and that this precludes some of the details that this House and indeed our media would wish to hear. Can I express on behalf of my honourable and right honourable friends our sympathy with the families of those who have already lost loved ones in the conflict. Can I also express our relief at the low number of casualties and the high number of prisoners which have been taken. I'm sure that this is attributable in no small way to the bravery and professionalism of our own troops. I'm sure the whole House will recognise that the responsibility for the intensification of the conflict lies with Saddam Hussein and his unwillingness to allay coalition misgivings about the failure of the laudable Soviet attempt to secure a last-minute peace settlement which guaranteed an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal from Kuwait. Is there anyone in the House who could accept the strength of a foreign minister's assurance that he could commit his troops to withdraw from a country while his president and commander-in-chief was giving orders to the same troops in the same country to put that land to the torch and its people to the sword? Could he confirm, Mr. Speaker, that the incursion into Iraqi territory by the coalition forces is designed to cut off the Iraqis retreating northwards out of Kuwait and is not an alteration in the war aims? Could he also explain the arrangements being made to assist the curbing of the oil well fires? And could he tell the House whether or not napalm was being used by Allied forces, and if so, for what purpose? And could he confirm whether the Prime Minister had been in contact with the President Gorbachev between the last statement to the House on Friday and Saturday's deadline? And could he also tell us the latest and most up-to-date position of British forces? We on this side of the House give our full support to our troops and the coalition forces at this time of peril. We share their determination that Kuwait shall be liberated. We do so not in any spirit of complacency. That would be foolish as it is dangerous. Not in any sense of euphoria, which would be as insensitive as it is inappropriate in view of the dangers ahead. But we give that support in a spirit of determination that a victorious conclusion for the coalition forces of the UN can be accomplished as speedily and decisively as possible.
I'm very grateful. I know the House appreciates very much both the content and the manner in which the honourable member has responded to the statement that I've made, and I think it is no secret that it is of the greatest support to our forces to know how strong has been the support right across the whole House of Commons as they undertake this difficult and challenging task. And I'm very grateful to the honourable member for speaking on behalf of his right honourable and honourable friends. Can I say, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, is quite correct to say that he was in touch with President Gorbachev. He had a 45-minute conversation with him, I think on Saturday morning, and indeed as part of a very wide consultation, and of course that including President Bush and President Mitterrand and other leaders of the coalition. A feature of this coalition has been the very close contact that has been maintained, and I know my right honourable friend has attached great importance to this. If I could say to the honourable member, he asked a particular question about napalm, and I'm pleased to confirm that it was used and proved extremely effective in tackling one of the difficulties in the obstacle belt, which were the oil-filled trenches, which the Iraqis intended to set fire to at a time of their convenience. We instead arranged with napalm to actually set fire to at a time of our convenience, so as not to disrupt the attack, and I'm grateful to him for giving me the chance to confirm that. Can I say I also appreciate the support that he has given for the need to show some restraint at this present time about the flow of information. Of course, there is acute interest among all of us and the whole country in what is happening, but we do have to respect the fact that this is a very challenging campaign. If I may say so, it's begun well, but it is true to say that at this moment we are just entering the critical phase of this land battle, and it is vital that we give all the support to our forces at this time.
I'm sure the House will want to bear in mind order what the right honourable gentleman has said in his statement. I propose to give precedence today to those who were not called when we had a statement on Friday, but I would ask for brief questions and careful questions too.
Now the first question from the backbenchers, from Sir Peter Blake, a Conservative.
My right honourable friend aware that the backbenchers in this House will wish to express their support for the coalition forces, and in particular for our own forces, in addition to the support which has already been expressed by my right honourable friend and the right honourable gentleman opposite. Since this is Kuwait's National Day, would it be appropriate for the House to express its admiration for the conduct of those Kuwaitis who have been allowed to remain in Kuwait in the face of the plunder, looting and terror wreaked on Kuwait and its people by the armed forces and the secret police of Iraq? And is not that conduct by Saddam Hussein another reason why it was right not to delay the ground offensive any longer?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend and for the support that he has given. And I'm sure that he is right also to draw attention to the role of and position of the Kuwaitis. I suspect I wasn't the only member of the House who heard that moving comment today on the radio, when one Kuwaiti officer was asked if he felt frightened and any fear, and he said, "Why should I? I'm going home." I think the recognition, nonetheless, that the home to which they go has been tragically and awfully disfigured in the meantime, nonetheless redoubles our determination to see that home liberated, and at the earliest possible moment.
Mr. Campbell.
Of the Liberal Democrats.
My honourable and right honourable friends, may I express to General Sir Peter Le Billier and all under his command our congratulations and our fervent hope of a speedy outcome of the land battle with a minimum of casualties. From the properly guarded information which the Secretary of State has given the House, it appears that the Allies may be set for a successful military outcome. Does the Secretary of State agree that a successful political outcome will depend upon a proper judgment as to the time when hostilities should cease?
Well, I'm sure the answer to the latter point is yes. We've made absolutely clear where we stand. We are determined to see the achievement of the United Nations resolutions. We are determined to see peace and stability restored to the area, and those have been our abiding concerns. I'm grateful to the honourable member and his right honourable friends for the support that they have given also across the House at this time of test for our forces. I think we can be very proud of the way they have conducted themselves under the leadership of General Sir Peter de la Billière. I was speaking to him some 30 minutes ago, in which he confirmed to me that in the last hour, 1st Armoured Division have taken their first 100 Iraqi prisoners as they move forward and coming into contact with more capable Iraqi units, and I have no doubt at all that they will give a very adequate and very excellent account of themselves.
Mr. Michael Mates.
Chairman of the Defence Select Committee.
Congratulations and thanks to all our troops out there. Will my right honourable friend also acknowledge the debt that we owe to all of the staffs in this country, from Ministry of Defence downwards, at High Wycombe and depots up and down the country, who have striven to make this operation, which has been a logistic nightmare, such a success. And would he not also acknowledge that what has happened in the last 24 hours fully justifies the length and severity and determination of the air assault, which has come under so much criticism in some sections of the media?
The opportunity for this campaign to be concluded in what we hope will be a short and sharp campaign with the minimum of casualties owes a tremendous amount, as my honourable friend has said, to the success and the perseverance and the courage and determination of all those aircrew who over the past weeks have done all they could with great skill to ensure that the balance was tilted on the battlefield in the favour of the coalition. And as he rightly says, the credits don't stop there, because this has been, in a very real sense, a team effort by the armed services, those in Germany who've surrendered maybe some of their equipment, given all the support that they have, also by many civilians. Let's not forget how many British civilians are actually serving in what is a war zone at the present time, making sure that our forces, that Saudi forces, that other forces get the support that they need. And I'm very proud to play whatever part I can in what has been a remarkable team effort.
Mr. Molyneux.
Jim Molyneux, leader of the Ulster Unionists.
Aware that on the very day when British troops were being committed to battle in the Gulf, a vicious attack was launched on troops on the frontier region of the United Kingdom in South Armagh, not very far from where the Prime Minister displayed such courage a few days earlier. Is the Secretary of State further aware that this kind of treachery results from the warped thinking of the Republican movement, that England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity? And is he further aware that that kind of thinking and that kind of action can only be met with firm resolution and resolve, not by concessions any more than they were in Iraq?
Well, we have made clear, and I think this government, as well as any government, in view of the threats and personal threats that it has received, has made clear, and I know this is something shared across the House, that we make no concessions and have no respect for terrorism from whichever quarter it comes. The Right Honourable Gentleman is right to draw attention that in the earlier days before the hostilities and conflict started, Saddam Hussein sought to intimidate, sought to threaten terrorism, and I think we can fairly claim that it did not alter our judgment and our determination of anybody in this House one iota.
Mr. Michael Colvin.
Conservative.
Paying tribute to the courage and skill of Allied forces, may I ask my right honourable friend to comment on what I hope will be Saddam Hussein's last speech when, following the announcement of the final phase for the freedom of Kuwait, he called once more for a so-called jihad or holy war against the infidel. Would he confirm that nothing could be further from the truth? He's already stated that there are 8 contingents from Arab countries in the Allied forces coming as representatives of the United Nations to the help of a small Arab country which has been seized by a tyrannical Arab neighbor. And for Saddam Hussein to call for a holy war when he's a member of the Ba'ath Party and therefore a non-believer surely is the sickest of all sick jokes.
Well, my honourable friend is right to draw attention to the very significant Arab contingents that are taking part in the ground campaign and the very determined way in which they are playing their part. I think it's true to say that none of those countries believed him. I think it's becoming increasingly clear with the willingness of so many to surrender that fewer and fewer of his own fellow countrymen believe him either.
Ted Rowlands.
Should not also at this moment our thoughts go out to those who are prisoners of war in Iraq? And in particular, will the Minister make it clear there can be no end to the hostilities until we get real categorical assurances about the safe passage and return of prisoners of war?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for raising that. We have never forgotten the position of our prisoners of war. I know the whole House shares the concern that the last we saw of them was the pictures on television of 2 of our pilots. We have no news of the others still. And he will be aware that in the earlier requests as to on what conditions we would agree to see a ceasefire, that we made absolutely clear that the return and safe return and immediate return of our prisoners of war was an absolute requirement.
Michael Marshall.
Conservative.
Can my right honourable friend say a word more about the extent of Saddam Hussein's scorched earth policy in Kuwait? In particular, can he confirm that the Parliament building has been set on fire, and can he say, or would he agree, that those who are responsible for these matters should be held accountable when the fighting ceases?
Well, figures have been given of 600, of 700 oil fires burning at the present time in Kuwait. There are clear reports of a program of destruction of buildings in Kuwait. I have heard it said that the Parliament building and certain main hotels, among others, have been destroyed. But information on this is not yet fully confirmed, but it does appear clear that instructions have been given, as I said in my opening remarks, for a wholesale destruction of Kuwait.
Merlin Rees.
Merlin Rees, former Labour Home Secretary.
The whole House agrees with that part of his statement that said that we mustn't put lives at risk through more accurate information. May I ask about accurate information to families? Will he make sure that all families know who to contact at all hours of the day, because they need reassurance, and there's nothing like loneliness to intensify their fears?
I agree entirely with the right honourable gentleman, and I hope that that is indeed what is happening. And if there are any honourable members, right honourable members, who have worries about the arrangements in their own particular areas, I'd be very grateful, first of all, if they'd like to check and be satisfied the arrangements are effective in their areas. And if there is any query or uncertainty about it, I know my honourable friend, the Minister for the Armed Forces, we'd be very much like to follow that up, because we have made the most thorough arrangements we can to try and help all the families concerned. And as honourable members know, it isn't just in this country. We have 10,000 wives in Germany whose husbands are away in the Gulf, and it's very important to remember those families as well.
Dr. Paisley.
Democratic Unionist.
Take it from me that all right-thinking people in Northern Ireland are behind the troops at this time as they battle for the freedom of Kuwait in the Gulf. But they also take it from me that they welcome the call of Her Majesty the Queen for the nation to pray, and that their thoughts are especially with the contingent of Ulstermen who are in the Gulf. Could he give us any information about the welfare of that contingent? And could he give us an assurance that it will be the policy of his government to bring to justice those who have carried out these atrocities recently in Kuwait?
I can indeed confirm that our thoughts obviously are with our forces at this time, and none less than those of our forces who come from Northern Ireland. And I think it very probable indeed, on the information available to me, I haven't actually checked this, I think it's likely that the first Iraqi prisoners of war, that the first members of the British forces I actually met, came from Northern Ireland, and I'm sure they were given a very good welcome. Can I say that in addition to that, that obviously we do very much support the comments made by the honourable member.
Jim Sillars of the Scottish National Party.
That the Allied ultimatum, with its reference to withdrawing to the position on the 1st of August, was quite meticulous in remaining within the United Nations mandate. Whereas, if we had accepted the Soviet proposal, is it not the case that that would not only have absolved Saddam Hussein for the crimes before Saturday, but would also involve absolving him for the torching of Kuwait and the intensification of the killing of Kuwaiti citizens?
Well, the honourable member makes a perceptive point. And I have to say, and I must say that I feel there must be many in Moscow who felt that they were negotiating in good faith, who now must feel singularly betrayed by what they find actually was happening and what the instructions of Saddam Hussein were while Tariq Aziz was in Moscow.
Michael Latham.
Conservative.
Will my honourable friend confirm that rumours persist of the most abominable atrocities within Kuwait itself? And will he welcome the statement made today in his military briefing by Prince Khalid bin Sultan to the effect that those responsible for atrocities in Kuwait will be held accountable when the war is over?
We have made very clear, and indeed my honourable friend the Foreign Secretary, the very early stage in this whole matter, when the first invasion of Kuwait took place, made absolutely clear that all individuals will be held personally responsible for their actions.
Mr. Ashley.
Labour.
Secretary of State aware that there have been excellent plans for the coordination of helping wounded troops from battlefield to hospital, but no such coordination no such coordination for plans for counselling, psychiatric care, social services, rehabilitation, jobs and adapted housing for wounded personnel. So would the Secretary of State, as these cover a wide variety of departments, recommend to the Prime Minister the appointment of a special minister who can coordinate all these necessities for the service personnel?
I think the right honourable gentleman may not fully appreciate the work that has been done, not just in the information on casualties, but I think the right honourable gentleman knows that at this moment there is 24 hours a day available services of counselling right throughout the country, of information, of helplines, on, I think, a more comprehensive basis than perhaps ever before in our history. And I know that's something that all right honourable members will welcome.
Buscan.
Will my
Conservative.
honourable friend accept that the best news he had today was the very low level of British and other allied casualties? Will he further accept that battle accidents can be the cause of as many casualties sometimes as enemy action? Will he therefore reflect on the fact that the very long training and great skill and leadership that has gone into this preparation of this struggle is reflects very great credit on our servicemen and on those of our coalition?
The whole House will listen with respect to my honourable friend and his obvious knowledge on these matters. It is no secret that even before the tragic accidents that affected US forces a little earlier in this campaign, we have been giving great concern to the risk of accidents to our own forces. And I can confirm to my honourable friend that the greatest possible attention is being given to avoid this, and indeed he will have seen yesterday where the speed of advance in certain places raised problems, and the very careful, in particular case with Jaguar pilots, the great care they took to change their targets to make sure that there was no risk of such an accident.
Duffy.
Pat Duffy, Labour, former minister.
That amid the very real qualms that honourable members will have about the ground war, none can doubt that the Allied coalition did go that extra mile for peace. And similarly, whatever doubts members may now have about the conduct of the war, and there is a residual concern about whether the Allied armies will be confined to the clear lines of the United Nations mandate, but provided the UN mandate is observed, then similarly there can be no doubt that the Allied armies will be fighting a just war, that they will be in the right, and that they will include no more formidable asset than our own 1st Armoured Division.
Well, there we leave the House of Commons, where Mr. King has made a statement this afternoon and was then answering members' questions. We're going more or less directly at 4 o'clock to the White House, where President Bush is talking to an organisation known as American Blacks. He'll be talking from the White House. So the 4 o'clock news, which is due in just over 45 seconds' time, will be bringing you a little later. But let's now go to Washington, where our correspondent David McNeil is waiting. Good afternoon, David.
Hello, Peter. It's the East Room of the White House. It's a speech in recognition of Black History Month. I note with interest that among the guests on the dais is General Colin Powell, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We do expect the President to have some opening remarks about the situation in the Gulf. This is expected because he hasn't really commented since the ground offensive began, apart from confirming that it was underway. He's come in now accompanied by his wife, and he's beginning to make his prepared remarks. So we'll listen to what he has to say.
Josh, how are you? Oh, home week around here. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Well, please be seated. Are you? Thank you for that warm welcome. Please. What is it? Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure for Barbara and me to welcome you all to the White House. It's good to see so many friends here today, including so many members of our administration, our Vice President, of course, and Lou Sullivan and Jack Kemp, Lynn Martin, of course, Chairman of our Joint Chiefs, General Powell, Connie Newman, Art Fletcher, and so many more. I salute our red-coated special guests. You bring honor to this place, and we're delighted to have you here. I know that the issue on all of our minds is the war in the Gulf. And I'm glad to report, after consultation a few minutes ago with Chairman Powell, General Powell, that the news is good. Coalition air and ground forces are advancing on their objectives. Enemy prisoners are surrendering in large numbers. And thus far, thank God, U.S. and coalition casualties are few. The liberation of Kuwait is on course and on schedule. We have the initiative. We intend to keep it. We must guard against euphoria. There are battles yet to come and casualties to be borne. But make no mistake, we will prevail. Kuwait will soon be free, and America's men and women in uniform will return home to the thanks and respect of a grateful nation. This was a war thrust upon us, not a war that we sought, but naked aggression, such as we have seen, must be resisted if it is not to become a pattern. And our success in the Gulf will bring with it not just a new opportunity for peace and stability in a critical part of the world, but a chance to build a new world order based upon the principles of collective security and the rule of law. But today we're here to celebrate the proud spectrum of black achievement. For we recognize that black history, this rich tale of roots and purpose and pride, is really everyone's history.
Well, the President's now moving on to give the text of his prepared remarks, having started with, as we expected, a reference to the Gulf. Clearly very satisfied, just had a briefing from General Powell, and he talks about enemy prisoners of war surrendering in large numbers, the liberation of Kuwait on course. We have the initiative and we'll keep it. Once again, of course, as has been the case right from the start, warning against euphoria, talking of battles yet to come, casualties still to be taken, but clearly a confident President.
David, one question to you. Is America euphoric at the present moment? Hello, David?
Yes, I hear you now. There was an interruption there.
I was saying just one question to you. You say trying to dampen down any euphoria. Would you say America was euphoric at the present moment, given the reports coming out of the Gulf?
Oh, great relief, that's the expression I would use, because they'd been warned that there could well be a number of casualties. Talk of casualties in the thousands was quite prevalent. And we're seeing a repeat of what we saw at the beginning of the air campaign. Euphoric reports at first, and an administration saying, now be careful, there may be setbacks. Well, if you look at the air campaign and the effect it seems to have had on the Iraqi ground forces, you could make a case for saying that the euphoria was justified in that instance, and it may well be true just now. But obviously they don't want to be caught here to be seen to be gloating and crowing and then suddenly take a major reversal. But it
it for you. So let's find out what happened just a few minutes ago when journalists were addressed by the Deputy Commander, General Gazot.
The French division Daguet, supported and accompanied by American units, thanks to its hard-hitting and precise maneuver, has seized late this afternoon the series of objectives which were assigned to it and whose capture was indispensable to the entire maneuver of the coalition forces. The rapidity and precision shown in the execution of its mission were the result of the determination of our soldiers, the complete cooperation between branches, armed services, and among allied forces. The professionalism shown by our troops was a determinant factor. Jumping off yesterday at dawn it has taken our regiments only 36 hours to neutralize an enemy division and cross the some 90 miles which separated the line of departure from the achievement of the objective. Steadily progressing, often slowed down by islands of determined enemies, the soldiers of the Daguet Division were able to overrun an enemy already weakened by the French and Allied airstrikes. Last night, after a short halt caused by a severe sandstorm, our units continued their offensive toward the north. At this very moment, the first major objective that has been assigned to them is under our control. More than 3,000 prisoners are being moved to our PRW camp. Numerous armored vehicles, artillery pieces, and other vehicles have been destroyed or captured. Let me add that last night, at the request of the Royal Saudian Army, our explosive specialists neutralized the warhead of a Scud missile which landed in the capital. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, that was Deputy Commander General Gazot of the French forces at the French military briefing, which took place just, 13 minutes ago, it being 13 minutes past 4. Well, a lot of briefings this afternoon so far. Chris Lee, around about 4:30, of course, we'll be getting the British briefing. I think time and time again, indeed, hearing what President Bush had to say as well, it is difficult not to be optimistic, to say the least. I mean, one has been talking about people trying to dampen down any kind of euphoria, but the facts and the figures that seem to be emerging from briefing after briefing make it very difficult to do that.
Yes, but we have to keep remembering that this is the easy part of the war. I mean, it may be that the rest will be easy, but in traditional and classical war terms, this is the easy part. Now, why? It's because the Allies, the coalition forces, have just spent since the past 39 days softening up these positions, softening up the Republican Guard and the front line. To such an extent that those tanks, for example, the Republican Guard tanks, haven't moved for 39 days. You cannot leave a tank dug in for 39 days. It's rather like leaving your car out in the open all through the winter. It takes a bit of going, and some of them will go, but a lot of them simply won't. Also, the troops themselves haven't been in very good condition. So, what we've actually seen is at the early part of the war, the Allies choosing when they wanted to attack. It was their decision. They picked the circumstances, having everything in their command, except perhaps one thing, and that was the fact they're attacking rather than defending, which is much easier to defend than it is to attack. So we've actually seen them go through the butter part of the defences, the front line, which are traditionally the weaker parts, which they knew how weak they are because they've been probing them. The coalition forces have been probing them all the time. They've been picking them out, interrogating them, finding out what the sort of positions were, what sort of ammunition stocks they were, what sort of spirit they were in. And so we shouldn't be surprised that things have been not easy, but we should have thought, well, they would be relatively simple in military terms. Perhaps more casualties. I'm surprised there haven't been more casualties. But the reason that President Bush will say, now, listen, let's just take it easy, hard battles are still possibly to come, is the fact that there are still Iraqi forces which are quite capable of inflicting heavy losses. You only have to hit one armoured personnel carrier and you can kill 12 people with one hit. And you only have to do that in a pitched battle a few times, and then suddenly these very light casualties, in the terms that we've come to know this battle so far, look quite different.
What worries me in some sense, I suppose, is that if you just listen to the numbers that come out of the briefings, and I use that in a sort of deliberately American sense, the Americans love numbers, and if you take a kind of projection of what you'd think, say, the average American soldier would put up with if he was dug in, or the British or the French soldier, and you think that that's how an Iraqi would react, I suppose you could say you might get it wrong. I mean, they may have lower expectations as to what constitutes comfort or safety in their dugout. When they say, they're getting one meal a day, some people might argue, well, for an Iraqi soldier, that's actually pretty good going to be guaranteed one meal a day, given possibly the economic level at which the country operates in normal circumstances.
Yes, I mean, there are all sorts of other things that you throw into that. I mean, for example, how many litres of water is a soldier supposed to have a day? 5 litres of water? Something like that. How many Iraqi soldiers are there supposed to be in that theatre? 500,000? Multiply that. Yeah? So just do the arithmetic on that, and you begin to see over 39 days how much water alone they were supposed to have. Now, it is a small point, but it does begin to give you an idea of the sort of the discomforts they've gone through and the deprivations they must have gone through. Also, on top of that, for 39 days they haven't had a good night's sleep. Why? Because the Allies have been bombing them for 39 days, 24 hours a day. They've also been bombing their equipment. They are reduced to a very low level, yet they are still capable, I'm sure, of inflicting heavy losses, maybe taking heavy losses themselves when doing so, but